Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday, and welcome to the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition's happy hour. What? Oh, this isn't happy hour? Oh, well, I'm just gonna have to improvise then. Hello and welcome to Connecting Communities Through Trail Development. My name is Laura Torchio. I'm principal of Laura Torchio, LLC, a woman-owned consultancy focused on active transportation, healthy communities, and placemaking. I'm not a bartender. Many of you know me as the Bike Lane Fairy and community champion with Bike and Walk Montclair. I was delighted to be invited to moderate this panel today, and I'm super excited to have all of you participating. So trails, a lot like people and beer, go through several stages of development. In this session, we'll hear from the trail experts of 3 trails in 3 different stages of development, and we'll showcase how multi-county trails can connect our most challenged communities and provide mobility options that are environmentally and economically sustainable. This session kind of reminds me of a beer flight, a sampling of microbrews with varying bodies, feels, and pours. So today's agenda is we're going to be looking at these different types of beers and trails with their different levels of hoppiness. And we're going to have 3 panelists present 3 trails. And then after the 3 panelists, we'll have Q&A. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. First, the session is being recorded, and after the summit, the recordings of this and all other sessions will be made available on the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition website. Second, we're excited to hear your questions and comments. So please use the Q&A function to jot down your questions at any time during the presentations, and we'll address them during the second half of the session. Don't confuse the Q&A function with the chat function. The chat function is open for you to converse among yourselves and to share ideas, but if you want questions answered by the panelists, please put them in the Q&A. And now for the introductions. Today we'll be tasting 3 brews, paired with the stories and lessons learned from 3 New Jersey trails. Lawrence Hopewell Trail will be presented by Eleanor Horn, co-president of the Lawrence Hopewell Trail. The Camden County Trail Link will be presented by Matt Ludwig, senior engineer and planner with NV5 Consulting. And the ESSEX-HUDSON Greenway will be presented by Deb Kagan, the executive director of the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition. Panelists will highlight things like advocacy and partnerships, equity and access, and maintenance and funding. And we're excited to hear about how these trails in different stages of development are critical links in larger networks and how we can all learn from the experiences of one another. So first up is the Lawrence Hopewell Trail. This is part of the circuit trails in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and it will be presented by Eleanor Horn. Paired with this trail, we're tasting a beer called Wake Up Call. It's a russet brown hoppy bitter brew with noses of pine and a malty base. And like the Lawrence Hopewell Trail, this brew will tantalize your taste buds and leave you yearning for more. Take it away, Eleanor.
Thank you so much, Laura. I have 3 goals for today. The first, let me get this up. Okay, I have 3 goals for today. The first is to describe the development of the Lawrence Hopewell Trail within the framework of the life cycle of a nonprofit organization. Second, to make the case that movements such as the Trails movement have a similar life cycle. And third, to suggest that trail building and advocacy organizations can be most effective when their activities reflect the stage of development of both the organization and the trails movement. The vision for there were 4 key elements of the vision for the Lawrence Hopewell Trail. The first was to build a 22-mile, mostly off-road, handicapped accessible, family-friendly, environmentally sound, multi-purpose trail that would connect Lawrence and Hopewell townships. Those townships are in central New Jersey. Another part of our vision was to be a hub for a larger trail system, and then to be a valued community amenity built and maintained by the community for the community. And then finally, we wanted to be a model of community engagement and public-private partnerships. We feel we have a unique public-private partnership with 2 corporations, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Educational Testing Service, and we also have strong partnerships with Mercer County, the Mercer County Park Commission, several nonprofits, and community activists. But none of this would be possible without the support of the 2 townships. Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to do this. I got carried away. So you will notice that our goal was to connect the 4 corporate campuses. And this is the way the trail is today, with those 4 corporate campuses as the anchor. Now, in 2012, we became a part of the circuit trails. We joined the big leagues when that happened. It's not just that we were part of a larger system, it was that we joined an incredible professional community that has been an inspiration and a great help to us ever since we joined. At our core, and core to our success, have been the amazing partnerships that we have developed, not only with the 2 corporations and the townships, but we consider our funders our partners because they have provided so much more than money. Now, one of the challenges that we have is that we do not own a single inch of the land. We don't control a single inch of the land. And so key to our success are our relationships with the owners of those properties, and they are certainly major partners. There have been a number of key milestones in our journey. The idea for the LHT was born in 2001, 2002 by Becky Taylor at BMS. You know, we promised that we would complete this trail in 4 years. After all, how hard could it be to put a 10-foot strip of paving in the ground? You could not convince us that we would not be able to complete this trail in 4 years or less. The first prick in our bubble came when we realized that no one other than BMS and ETS would fund us. Most trail construction grants go to governmental bodies or to formal organizations. And so we incorporated in 2004. We are a very small nonprofit incorporated in New Jersey. We have a 17-member working board of trustees. And when I say working, they really work. They do most of the work of the organization. We have 1 part-time employee, thousands of friends of the Lawrence Hopewell Trail, and 450,000 users a year. Now, our current priorities are to complete the trail. We are spending more time thinking about maintaining the trail because we have segments that are now 15 years old or older. We are working on connections to other communities and trails. And we are working on an issue that we did not consider at all when we started 20 years ago, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, both on the board, among trail users, and in our programs. And then we are spending quite a bit of time reimagining the future of the LHT once we complete the original 22-mile loop. One of the things that has helped us build incredible community support are the activities that we have. We have two main activities. One is Trail and Treat for children. It attracts a lot of parents and grandparents. And the other is our Full Moon Ride, which attracts between 400 and 600 people, some of whom come from New York and Philadelphia. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the life cycle of an organization and how we have progressed through it. The first stage was the idea stage. That is the magnificent obsession. And by the way, this life cycle paradigm is well accepted in the nonprofit sector. So, you know, we lived on adrenaline for a long time, and we were incredibly naive. We knew absolutely nothing about building a trail. I think part of our appeal, or the charm of it, was the fact that we knew nothing, but that we were going to have a long-term viable community project. The second stage is the startup stage, and it's still, we're functioning on a labor of love. We had little or no budget. It was a bootstrap operation. By the way, most nonprofit organizations never get past this first or second stage. Then our third stage, the growth stage, and this is where we really are now. And that was really becoming who we were. Our mission and vision began to take hold in the community, but we still had the challenge of having a mismatch between the resource demands and what we were able to raise to carry out the work. We realized that we would have to have a formal structure. We did become a 501c3. We could not have survived without the incredible working board. We finally were able to hire a part-time staff member. We still only have a part-time staff member. And we recognized that we had to begin to raise money from a broader group of donors to support the organization. But we have been chronically undercapitalized, and that has impacted our progress. Because we had fewer resources than we had vision, we had to develop a very strong strategic focus. Now, the maturity stage, I have to admit that we're not quite there yet. We're like an adolescent, part child, part adult, but we're working on growing up. We have achieved the activities that are above the line. We are still working on those that are below the line. Now, the next stages are the decline, turnaround, and termination. We don't intend to decline. We certainly don't intend to terminate. And we do recognize that we may have to make some modifications in how we operate if we are to ensure the development of the continuation of the Lawrence Hopewell Trail into perpetuity. But one of the points I want to make is that movements have a life cycle too. And the trails movement is really hot now. I mean, this has been, the last couple of years have been the most exciting years in the 20 years that I've been involved with trails. And I think the trails movement is still in part at the magnificent obsession stage, where there's a lot of excitement about the trail. And we are discovering new needs for trails or new ways of expressing the need for a trail. It's not just health and recreation. It's not just trails as transportation alternatives, but now we're talking about the role of trails in the protection of clean water, in connecting communities, in the mental health benefits, and even the role of trails in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those of us in the trails in trails organizations are beginning to understand that we have to mobilize the support of others for maximum impact. And I see the beginnings of a strong movement with a lot of popular appeal and awareness. The next stage in this trails movement is the recognition that we are all going to be better off to the extent that we jointly plan, jointly advocate, and maybe even come together to jointly maintain our trails. The growth stage is when this movement becomes truly impactful, and we have signs of that now. But one of the things that happens in the growth stage is that the organizations that are designing and producing trails become stronger partners with other stakeholders, such as funders and policymakers, who not only provide resources to trails organizations, but begin to seek their advice and partnership. We recognize in the growth stage that our stakeholders all have different roles, but that there is synergy resulting in progress on trails. New stakeholders will even emerge. One of the worrisome parts, though, of being in the growth stage is that larger projects gain more attention and support. They're more sexy than the smaller projects, which sometimes struggle for resources as a result. But at the height of all of this is greater public awareness and acceptance. And then there's the maturity stage in this movement, where the concept of trails is so well established that people begin to take trails for granted. There's a lot of progress. There is stability in revenue and support, at least for a while. There is active engagement across the public spectrum, and the movement is able to handle emerging or new issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then the success of the movement means that in some cases that passion will wane. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the decline, turnaround stage and the terminal stage, because those of us who are trail enthusiasts have a hard time imagining that that will happen. But what I want to leave you with is a suggestion for trail advocates and builders, that we have a clear focus on the life cycle of the trails movement, that we understand where our organizations are in its own life cycle, where our trails are. And then we plan our activities against the backdrop of the life cycle of the trails movement for maximum benefit for each of us. The intersection is where we are most likely to find success in advocacy, fundraising, programming, and in gaining public support. So I would suggest to you also that when you review the experience of the Lawrence Hopewell Trail or any other trail, that you take into consideration the life cycle of that trail, the life cycle of the organization sponsoring that trail, and where the movement is. Because sometimes we try to replicate something that worked in 2001, 2002, that would not be as effective today. We miss the new opportunities for advancing our trail, as well as the trails movement. So I want to end by inviting you to come visit the LHT, visit it in person or visit it at our website. But one thing I want you to do is to watch us, to share in our development, and to appropriately learn from our experiences. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Eleanor. That was really great. And I love the idea of mobilizing support for a movement. That's awesome. Next up, we're going to have Matt Ludwig, and he's going to talk about the Camden County Link Trail, which is also part of the circuit trails in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And the Camden Trail is in its middle stages of development. And so for this one, we're going to pair it with a medium-bodied brew called Ghost Walker. Now, Ghost Walker is a little bit lighter than the Wake Up Call, but it's really amped up with flavor. So take it away, Matt.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so as Laura said, this project is in its middle stages right now. We being NV5 are currently in the engineering and permitting stages of various segments of this project. But most of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to focus on the feasibility study that was done a few years ago. So Camden County realized several years ago that they were not as advanced, their trail network was not as advanced as other counties in the Circuit Trails region. And so in 2015, DVRPC performed, with the county's assistance, performed a network analysis to map out over 500 miles of trails and on-street bicycle connections that connected everything in the county: neighborhoods, downtowns, business districts, open spaces. So once they had this completed product, a 500-mile network, they didn't know where to start. They needed to know, how do we even get going on this and create something here? So that's when NV5 was brought on board, and what we did was create essentially the spine of the network. That was the kind of the working name at the beginning, was creating this spine. And at the beginning, it was just this initial line on the map, about 34 miles. We knew we wanted to start at the Ben Franklin Bridge, which at that time was the ramp leading down from the Ben Franklin Bridge to the Rutgers campus was under construction. We knew that was going to be completed. That was going to be a big connection to Philadelphia. And then making it down to the Atlantic County line in the southern portion of the county. So we started out with this initial map, or this initial line on the map, which eventually became called the Cross Camden County Trail. And as I'll get into in a little bit, it is now called the Camden County Link Trail after the feasibility study was complete. So this trail, 34 miles long, it'll connect most of the municipalities throughout Camden County. It connects the densest parts of the county as well. And there's now a study being performed by South Jersey TPO to close the gap here that will hopefully connect this trail to Atlantic City. So you can imagine eventually leaving Philadelphia, getting to Atlantic City, and then even other short points beyond that by bike. I like to call this, dare I say, to compare it to something for North Jersey folks, this is very similar to the ESSEX-HUDSON Greenway. It is something that is connecting urban places. It is getting further out and connecting many communities along the way. So the goals of the project, we wanted to establish this uninterrupted trail. We wanted to make it a high demand corridor so that you get more bang for the buck, I like to say. When you make it an all ages and abilities trail, you allow more people to use it. It just creates that forward momentum. We wanted to create a high level of user experience. This trail is unique in that it starts in the urban core of Camden. It connects to the riverfront. It connects multiple suburban communities, and then it reaches out into the Winslow Wildlife Management Area. So very rural, gets into the Pinelands. So throughout this 34-mile ride, if you will see a very different context as you go throughout. It's very exciting. And it also connects to a lot of open space and parks. There's over 22 different public spaces or open spaces and public parks that this path will connect to. I'll say one of the goals that is not listed on this list that we put together for the feasibility study was a mandate from elected officials to do this quickly, as quick as possible, because they wanted to see action, they wanted to see it done. So it's that was the great thing about this, is there's a lot of political will behind this project, and that's very exciting to see. So we had that initial line on the map. We performed a full alternatives analysis. I'm not going to get into the weeds about the technicalities of all that today. I'm just going to kind of gloss over some of the highlights here. The route, like I said, some of the goals were to connect people to places. We wanted to connect businesses because one of the things I'll get into here in a little bit is the economic development piece of this trail. We wanted to be able to get that return on investment. So we were able to connect to 5 of these suburban retail districts as identified by DVRPC. And as the network is built out by municipalities or the county, it will connect to at least 5 of these other districts. So again, connecting people to places, that was a very important piece of this. One other thing I should mention while we're on the craft beer topic today, or craft beer theme today, is that the eventual trail route will connect to or at least be within walking distance of currently 7 breweries in Camden County. So the suburban communities, if you recall from that map, there's in the middle of the project, there's a very straight line portion of the project. That is going to be a 12-mile long rail with trail. So active Conrail rail line, the trail will be located parallel to the tracks. In those communities, Audubon, Haddon Heights, Barrington, Magnolia, these communities banded together several years before the feasibility study was complete and kind of completed their early studies. They definitely knew they wanted a trail through their communities. And the very first portion that's purpose-built of the link will be completed in Audubon and Haddon Heights. Construction slated to start next year. So they're very excited. These are 2 business owners in Audubon and Haddon Heights. One owns a barbecue shop and one owns a cafe. They're generating excitement among the community and are excited about the connectivity that this project is going to bring. So the suburban communities already had their act together. They knew where this trail wanted to be. So that part of the feasibility study, we just had to do more of a technical analysis on structures and making sure that an AASHTO design trail was going to fit within the rail corridor. The real challenge of this project was routing throughout the city of Camden. And while I'll get into the technical engineering side of things in a minute, we looked at, where, from a demographic standpoint, from a connectivity standpoint, where was it important to have this trail? So this map that you see here is census tracts % of households with no vehicle available. And outlined in the red dash there, that is the city of Camden. So you can see that Camden City by itself has a very high percentage of folks that don't have a vehicle available in the household. This is a map, this is environmental justice mapping from the DVRPC. If you were on the environmental justice call yesterday, you may remember this being brought up. This, the factors there on the bottom of the screen, I'm not going to read them off, but they factor in a number of different population groups and give a score to census tracts. So that way you can see where the highest percentage of disadvantaged populations are located. And again, Camden being outlined in the red dash there, you can see has a high population of environmental justice tracts. So taking it a little bit more zoomed in look, kind of getting more on the structural technical feasibility side of things. Again, here's Camden dashed in red here. You can see that there's the biggest park in the county system is Cooper River Park, or the most popular park, I should say. So very easy access to folks from Cherry Hill, Collingswood, but it's very split off from the rest from the city of Camden. Several factors. And Gateway Park is a newer park that's been developed, but also very cut off by the interstate highway system and other controlled access freeways. So very isolated, very difficult to reach. So this is one of the biggest challenges in this trail is we have to get folks over, around, through these massive barriers. both physical and psychological barriers. It has split the city into multiple pieces. So there's the trail route with the black line with the glowing yellow. That is the eventual trail route that was developed and is currently in the engineering stages. We're very excited that last week DVRPC awarded the project $3 million in CMAQ funding to build a pedestrian bridge over Route 130. So that will connect Cooper River Park to Gateway Park. So this project will require 5 different bridge crossings or modifications of current bridges. This project, this portion of Camden, the trail, comprises of about 15% of the length of the entire trail, but it's going to be about 25% of the overall cost of the trail, just because to mitigate those issues that freeways and other barriers have caused in the city. And then right now, NV5 is also as a separate project through the local technical assistance program through New Jersey DOT. We are working on just starting the city's first ever active transportation plan. So that network that is integrated into this link trail route is going to help open up the city to folks and access by means other than car. Very quickly, our public outreach, we hosted pop-up meetings at various locations throughout the county. We used the Wikimap software. I think a lot of people are familiar with that, but it really helped people post geographical based comments to be able to highlight specific issues. As I mentioned earlier, 22 different parks and open spaces that this trail will connect to eventually. Skip over that real quick. Economic impact. Once this trail is completed, it was determined that nearly $20 million a year will be infused into the Camden County economy through outside spending. So spending coming from outside the county. So that doesn't even include the spending folks that live in the county that go down the street to the ice cream shop. It doesn't include things like that. Final report is available online at camdencounty.com/trails. There's a whole lot of other information there. We flew a drone video of the entire corridor. That's available as well. Some of the public meetings from last year related to the engineering phase of the project are available. So a lot of information available for this project. The engineering, as I mentioned, is going on right now. All of the segments in yellow that you see on the map are priority 1 segments. Those are actively in design. Priority 2 segments are just starting the design and permitting stage this year. And priority 3 is future stage. Laura, I will kick it back to you.
Great, thank you, Matt. I'm psyched. I think we can put together a rolling pub crawl or brewery crawl once the trail's done. I also love that you talked about both the physical and the psychological barriers, because sometimes the physical ones are easier to address. For our last presentation, we're going to hand the camera over to Deb Kagan, and she's going to tell us about the ESSEX-HUDSON Greenway, which is a glimmer in the eye of trail advocates everywhere, and potentially a critical link in the East Coast Greenway and the 9/11 Memorial Trail. While the idea of this trail is well over a decade old, we're still awaiting its arrival. So in anticipation, we will pair this talk with Punk IPA, a juicy tropical fruity blend full of flavor and spunk. And like the ESSEX-HUDSON Greenway, it's a liquid celebration of clarity in the face of uncertainty. Take it away, Deb.
Thank you, Laura. I love the beer that you chose. So I'm very excited to talk about this trail project because this has been a major project of the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition for quite a while. So I'm going to share my screen with you all and walk you through our project. So the ESSEX-HUDSON Greenway is a proposed shared use path and greenway for Northern Jersey. And as Laura mentioned, advocates have been working to create this greenway for almost actually 2 decades. The project, which is being led by a partnership between the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, the Open Space Institute, and the 9/11 National Memorial Trail. and it is now in an active acquisition stage of development, which is the closest it has ever come to becoming a reality. So in this group, we are in the baby stage, or the magnificent obsession stage, as Eleanor talked about, with some other changes as well. So the proposed Greenway would transform the former old boot and rail line. So this is a rail to trail conversion, which runs for nearly 9 miles, connecting 8 municipalities, including suburbs and major cities, and Essex and Hudson counties. And these are 2 of the most densely populated counties actually in the country. There's a few facts I'll just go over to give you an idea of what this project looks like on the ground. It would actually create 135 acres of new green space that would be available to over 500,000 residents within a 1.5 mile radius. So you can get a sense of that dense population. It also would provide transportation alternatives for what we estimate to be about, in the area, 300,000 commuters. It is 100-foot wide on average. So this gives us a lot of space to work with both low impact and high impact environmental designs for green infrastructure that would mitigate flooding. And in addition to the rail line, this proposed purchase and sale agreement includes the subterranean rights, and that allows us to provide broadband infrastructure along the entire corridor, especially important for communities that have digital divide and don't have a lot of bandwidth. And as Laura also mentioned, it does link, it can link and be used for segments by the East Coast Greenway and the 9/11 National Memorial Trail, as well as connecting with the Morris Canal. So we talk about this project really as a transformative project for the region, as it really could provide a diverse range of benefits that are lacking in these particularly densely populated communities. And I have to say, after listening to Eleanor, we are really building this based on lots of experience that other trail developers have made. So we're sort of the newer version coming out of this. So when we look at what benefits the trail can offer, there is, of course, open space, which is so critical for recreation, health, and mental health. And we're all, of course, even more aware of this from the last year during COVID, of the need to have that space. It also has major new opportunities for active transportation between towns and major cities in northern Jersey. So it includes it includes Jersey City and Newark in northern New Jersey, and connectivity to a number of parks, to schools and business main districts. But these are not the only benefits that can be realized from this project, and they're not the only benefits that we are talking about with the communities. There are major environmental benefits, from mitigating flooding and restoring natural habitats to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and developing local economies. And there are also, as I mentioned, opportunities for broadband infrastructure. This particular corridor goes across many different diverse communities. And this is just one lens of what that can look like. This is a map of language other than English spoken at home. And you can just see across here how many different diverse communities there are, and the potential for connecting them, for people being able to move from one community to another. And there is really no infrastructure or easy way to do that off of roads, certainly throughout this region. So there's a really important aspect to equity that we are trying to pay attention to in this project. Some of these communities identified as overburdened communities, which is a term that has come out with the new environmental justice law that the DEP has recently put through. And these overburdened communities, you can see what the definition here on the left is: 35% low income, more than 40% minority, or more than 40% limited English proficiency. And these are communities that are highly impacted by increased environmental pollution and public health stressors. So the opportunity to have open space is a very important health factor that we talk about with these communities. Not only is it important to have the open space, but these are communities that suffer from increased greenhouse gas emissions, high levels of obesity from lack of exercise space, asthma, heart conditions, all go along with this grouping of overburdened communities. So it is not only an equity, but it's an environmental justice issue. In addition to that, a number of more urban communities are also affected by severe combined stormwater overflow problems, or CSO. And part of the proposed plans for the Greenway is to utilize the land under the railroad line that I just talked about, which is the subterranean rights that we have as part of this proposed, for CSO, or for combined stormwater overflow storage, to mitigate flooding. And this is a major issue in some of the more urban areas, in Newark, in Kearney, in Jersey City. They actually get fined by the federal government if they're not able to mitigate this kind of CSO flooding. So this is a major benefit to this project that we're also talking about. And you can see here, this is actually Newark, and these white dotted lines are the proposed areas along the Essex-Hudson Greenway that can be used for that subterranean storage units. So the trail has the potential to be a major connector for existing long-range trails that we just mentioned. Both the East Coast Greenway and the 9/11 National Memorial Trail have expressed intentions to use part of the Essex-Hudson as connecting segments. And then there are many other local trail connectors that you can see, including some major projects that are being proposed for Jersey City that would connect this actually from Montclair all the way to the Hudson River. And way we look at this, and Matt was talking about this idea of a spine. This is a spine that we see can be really part of a much larger northern New Jersey trail network. In addition to these identified trails, there are a number of other abandoned or out of use rail lines that could become part of a northern Jersey trail network. So although there have been no design decisions made yet, because we are still in acquisition phase, we did do some renderings, and there have been a lot of environmental and engineering studies. And these renderings we use for community engagement. So we have been heavily involved in community engagement, even at this phase, even before design, so that we are building relationships both with local officials and with community organizations and community groups, so that we have input even at this early stage that hopefully will lead us into the design and planning stages. Now, these renderings represent 3 different landscapes. So you can see the great variety of habitat and landscape that would be throughout this particular corridor. This is more in the suburban areas, and you see on the left here, there's space for natural habitat and rain gardens, as well as plenty of space for community gathering and programming. And here, of course, is the center commuting and walking pathway. This is actually a rendering of a section in Newark. Right now, in this section in Newark, there are no green, no trees, no plants. It is completely asphalt. It's being used for storage and leasing by some local companies. So this would really be an opportunity to create completely new green space, and to plant trees and have some tree coverage to help with heat island mitigation. And this is one over the Meadowlands. So this corridor goes not only through 8 communities, but all the way across the Meadowlands, which is a really beautiful, actually natural space, but very difficult to get to. So here you can see the potential for increased access for 2 major cities on either side, Jersey City and Newark, and Kearney, to this opportunity for recreation, for kayaking, for fishing, for taking walks and bird watching. So there's tremendous potential for recreation and access to nature that this would enhance. So this is a timeline. I'm going to go through briefly sort of the stages of development and a timeline for acquisition for us. In 2002, the railroad that owns the right-of-way, the Norfolk Southern, ended their commuter service. And soon after that, they ended some freight service as well. And since that time, really local grassroots advocacy groups have been trying to get them to sell the right-of-way to create a greenway. And the Ice and Iron Trail, Friends of the Ice and Iron Trail, the Bloomfield Open Space Fund were 2 of the early ones that began advocating and bringing local advocates together. So this went on for quite a while, and the railroad was showing absolutely no interest in selling the right-of-way for a very long time, and it was very difficult to continue that advocacy and keep up that momentum and energy. And it was still isolated. It was still mainly local organizations. So in 2014, actually, the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition galvanized the local advocacy, bringing everybody together and taking this on as a project, as a main campaign of the organization. So in that period between sort of 2014 and 2017, the New Jersey Bike and Walk partnered with the 9/11 National Memorial Trail. And that was a very important partnership because they had worked with the railroad on other projects, and they were able to help us to connect with them and to begin a more in-depth dialogue with the railroad about the possibility of selling it. And that was actually successful. They came around and decided they were interested in selling it. And at that time, the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition brought on the Open Space Institute. Their expertise is exactly in these kind of negotiations and transactions. They are a leading national conservation land trust, and they came on to take over the job of negotiating a purchase and sale agreement. And we worked with them to do some major fundraising to support all those efforts. So around 2018, negotiations started. By 2020, they had a confirmed preliminary purchase and sale agreement with the railroad to actually purchase the entire line, all 8.6 miles intact, for a nice price tag of $65 million, which we can talk about later. And in this period and up all the way till now, the fundraising and the Open Space Institute, in partnership with New Jersey Bike and Walk and 9/11, have been doing the due diligence behind this to prepare this project to be taken over financially and management-wise by a government agency. So there's been engineering, environmental studies, framework report, and the railroad got an official abandonment status from the federal government, which means that they can now sell this property if this purchase and sale agreement is not completed to anyone, to any private, and they can break up what would otherwise be a once in a lifetime opportunity to create this intact greenway. So we've been doing, particularly in the last couple of years, ramped up a lot of the advocacy We have gotten resolutions of support from all of the municipalities, from local officials, from some local education, boards of education from both counties. And we're now also in conversations with what is the public-private partnership going forward that we will need to both do private funding, as well as, of course, the grants and state and federal funding, and to work with whoever does take this on, so that we make sure that the input from communities is still being heard and is part of that design and planning process. So we're in conversations with a consultant on looking at other public-private partnerships, both in New Jersey and around the country. And we are currently in ongoing discussions with county and state officials with the intention to close the acquisition this year. So the purchase and sale agreement with Open Space Institute was for 1 year with a 1-year extension. We are now in the 2nd year extension. So we need to actually complete that acquisition by the end of this year, or we will lose the opportunity and the railroad can then sell it to whoever they wish. Oops. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the importance of the advocacy for this project. We had put up digital letters of support and got over 4,000 letters that have been sent both to the counties and to the governor. We've got over 92 supporting organizations that have signed up on the website, which is ESSEX-HUDSON-GREENWAY.org. And as I mentioned before, we have resolutions of support from all of the local municipalities and elected officials. So we've been spending this past year doing a tremendous amount of outreach to both, as I said, both elected officials, to municipal bodies like the Essex and Hudson commissioners, to town councils, to lots and lots of coalitions of community organizations, both bike ped friendly, environmental, and equity focused community based organizations. I think we've given over 40 presentations. If any of you have seen any of them, we've been doing that over the past year. And we also looked at staff to do this. So as part of our fundraising, we took into account that we would need a full-time community engagement. And we've also got a bilingual community engagement advisor who we're working with. So as I showed you on the map, there's a lot of these communities where English is not the first language spoken at home, with the majority of those communities speaking Spanish at home. So having somebody who is bilingual to do that outreach was very important for us to identify as an equity issue, to do that deep kind of community outreach that we think is what will make this a really significant project for communities that they identify and see this as their own project. So we are still in our advocacy campaign. If anybody hasn't gone to the ESSEX-HUDSON-GREENWAY.org site, there's a tab on support. You can send a letter, digital letter, very easily to the governor's office. We are focusing our advocacy right now at the state level. We are in conversations with county and state officials. And right now, we think it's really important for the governor's office to understand how broad the support across the region is for this. So you can also send an organizational letter with your letterhead to the governor. Lauren Rushing, whose email is up here on the screen, and Lauren will also put it in the Q&A for everybody, is our community engagement manager. And you can also, if you're a organization, can be listed as a supporting organization. There's an easy form, again, to fill out on the website. And if you're interested in any presentations or working with us with any organizations in your community, please also get a hold of us and with Lauren. So thank you very much. We're very, very excited to see where this is going to go this year, and open to all your questions. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Deb. That was great. I had a question that I was going to ask all of the panelists today, and that is, what is one thing you'd like advocates to take action on? And Deb really covered that with her presentation. And one of the things I just wanted to comment on is, those of you who know me know that at the bike summit, the very first bike summit, I talked about that there is no bike lane fairy. There's no such thing as someone who's going to come in and wave a magic wand and make this stuff happen. And there's no trail fairy either. There is no they. There's really just us. And it's really important for us to act now and act often to support the trails, to support the movement, etc. So thank you to all the panelists. I want to jump into question and answer, but we are just about out of time. So for those people who have to get off, at 1 sharp, I will do my conclusion now, and then we will stick around a little longer for Q&A for those who can stay. Please do. I want to thank all the attendees and the panelists for participating today. This was a really great session, and just to be fully transparent, the beer selection today is it's from an alcohol-free brewery called Brewdog. So I'm not even a little bit tipsy. How about that? Also, this is the last session for today, for Friday. However, there are 2 more scheduled for tomorrow. If you wish to attend either of those, please remember to register for each session individually at New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition's website, NJBWC.org. And when this Zoom session ends, when we log off, you'll be prompted to take a short feedback survey. So we appreciate you taking the time to fill it out, and we look forward to your responses. To the question as to whether I will be bringing the rest of the Brewdog brews to the Delaware River Heritage Trail bike ride tomorrow, yes, I will. So let's move on over to the questions that have come in. Are all the panelists ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we're going to stick around a little while, so if you can stay on the session, please do. The first question I want to pose to all of our presenters. And the idea was, I guess the first question that came to my mind is what makes it challenging or most challenging for people to embrace trails in their communities? But I wanted to switch that and take it away from the challenges and what makes people find trails irresistible in their communities, in your experience?
I can start with that one. I think it's almost like a drug for some people. Once they discover this amenity in their community, they become hooked on it. A lot of places don't have a lot of open green space. And the thing that we're finding is with the general public is sometimes they don't even know that these amenities exist in their community. We did a project on the Pennsylvania side of the river, north of Philadelphia, and we were doing some pop-up outreach. So we were meeting with the general public at various Earth Day events is what we were doing. And when we were outlining that the specific project we were working on was connecting to 2 other trails, they didn't even realize those other 2 trails were in their community already. So once that outreach is performed to folks and let them know this amenity exists and doing the kind of events and stewardship to draw people to those places in the first place. Once they're there, then the trail sells itself, basically. But the biggest thing is to get them there in the first place, and then the infrastructure takes it from there.
I agree with Mike. One of the things that we have heard is about the mental health benefits of the trail during the pandemic. So many people have discovered different parts of the trail. They've discovered the value of and the serenity of being in nature at a time when the world is sort of going crazy. So the pandemic has helped us a great bit.
I have a question specifically for you, Eleanor. This question's from Andy Bessold. Hey, Andy. Is there a point where the Lawrence Hopewell Trail is folded into a county-run trail system and the Lawrence Hopewell Trail organization into a Greater Mercer Trail Advocacy Group?
That's a question that's after my own heart. We now have a task force looking at the future of the Lawrence Hopewell Trail after we complete the original 22 miles. That's a possibility. We're working on that. Stay tuned.
Awesome, thank you. There's a question specifically for you, Matt. This is from Ashna. Hi, Ashna. And she says, hi, Matt. Are there examples of studies quantifying the benefits of trail projects, this one or in general, that help explain the investment put in? Are you on mute? Are you talking but on mute?
Yeah, I'm trying to give Matt a little bit of backup. This is Mike Dannemiller. I'm a colleague of Matt's, and I helped to put this together originally. Matt managed a great project. One of the steps we did at the beginning of Cross Camden County Trail was an economic impact analysis about how much, every dollar invested in the trail brings back so much more. Matt, are you back?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can, please.
Great. Yeah, sorry, I had a little technical issue there. Now, Mike, go on. Finish.
Oh, I was mentioning how you really managed with eConsult. Yes, we did economic analysis on Cross Camden County Trail, but also for East Coast Greenway, you helped put together more of a generic, hey, here's some of the economic impact, why investing in trails brings more dollars to your town, both with the construction jobs, our local jobs, but people travel with their wallet and they spend money all along the trail, and trails really are an economic engine. That's what Ashna was asking about. Maybe you could elaborate better.
Yeah, so if you go to camdencounty.com/trails, you have to scroll a little bit kind of midway through the page, you'll find our original feasibility study that was completed back in 2017. And the numbers that Mike was talking about are located towards the end of that feasibility study. Another one that I'll put in the chat in a minute is a report that we did for the East Coast Greenway a couple of years ago. We looked at the economic benefits of completing the East Coast Greenway in the Delaware Valley. So basically throughout the state of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and up to Princeton, New Jersey. And we quantified the benefits of that. So if you go to greenway.org/impact, and I think Daniel just put it in the chat right now, that's another good study to look at to show what and we talk specifically about the East Coast Greenway, but there are some numbers that can be used in general. For example, for every mile of trail that's built, there's some numbers I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a good report to reference for sure.
Great. Okay, another question for the Camden link from Andy again. Did the train, I guess this was the 2019, I believe, did the train crash onto the Appalachian Trail at Harper's Ferry create concerns with freight rail for the Camden Rail with Trail section?
No. Conrail has not brought that up in any concern. The way that the county is pursuing this with Conrail is, I mentioned the first portion that's going to be purpose-built for the link, or the first portion that's going to be completed, is going to be in Audubon and Haddon Heights. It is a rail with trail. It's the part, that specific part is about as far away from the rails as we can get. It's 20 or 30 feet from the rail, or even more. There's places where it's 50 or 60 feet from the rail. But throughout the rest of the rail with trail corridor, we're never, the specific issue that was brought up is the footpath at Harper's Ferry is right next to the railroad tracks. We're never that close. We're never, so there's, it's never been brought up. I don't see it as an issue. You know, railroads are always concerned about liability in general, but that's where this first project that the county's pursuing is meant to kind of ease their fears and actually prove to them that when we were doing the feasibility study, we saw kids on the tracks all the time.
Yeah.
And now when this trail is built, there's going to be fencing put up. We're going to prove to the railroad that the trail actually creates a safer environment than what's out there right now.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question for Deb. This question is from Nathan. And he asks, will the Essex-Hudson Greenway be open 24 hours a day? This is important for a trail to be considered a true transportation option.
Yes, we're very aware of these questions and we get this question fairly often. The answer is we don't have the answer to that yet. And that's because we are focused on getting this acquired. So once it is acquired, that will be a discussion that will have to take place between whatever government agency or private partnership, public partnership is managing the process for planning and design. And so another reason why it's really important to have these relationships early on with the community so that that input is heard and gets to be part of the discussion when actual design and planning and management take place.
Great. Another question about the Essex-Hudson Greenway is, have you received any support from the Meadowlands Commission?
Yes, actually, we had meetings and been in discussions with, it's now the Sports and Exhibition. Yeah. And yeah, they've been great. We've had a lot of conversations with them. We met with them early on. They've been supportive and been part of the conversations going forward.
Another question is asking you, Deb, what is your plan to secure acquisition funds for the Essex-Hudson Greenway?
We're thinking of opening a brewery. So everybody come out. We're in process of putting together a funding package. It's been a very serious effort on our part. We have consultants working with the team on that. We are in current live conversations about that. So I can't go into a lot of detail on it, except to say that we are looking to get funding that will not impact local municipal budgets or the county budget or COVID relief, but looking at other funding sources and the funding package that we're trying to get put together would include both acquisition and some development funding to begin with, at least.
I have a question for all of you, but particularly Matt and Eleanor. What would you do differently if you were starting today, looking at your trail project with fresh eyes? I know, Eleanor, you touched on that.
One of the things that I would do is to spend much more time in learning about trail design and construction before starting. The second thing would be to do whatever was necessary to hire a full-time executive director in the beginning. It would have made it a lot, the whole process faster. And finally, I would have weighed the advantages and disadvantages of using corporate campuses as the anchors, because they are in a part of the township where there's very little economic, racial, and ethnic diversity. And so we're having to work extra hard to bring people from the southern part of Lawrence Township to the trail. And there's I-95 in the middle.
Yeah.
I would say with the link, I would have wanted to do a more pinpointed outreach to folks, especially in the city of Camden. The fortunate thing that because we're now working on the city's active transportation plan that we have learned from that. We recognize that now that this new active transportation plan for the whole city is starting up, that we really need to make it more of a grassroots kind of thing. We're reaching out to different neighborhood groups, trying to get as much participation as possible, and getting folks to understand why it's important to do that sort of thing, and then how it can affect their everyday life.
Great. Anything to add, Deb? You're still in the beginning.
Yeah.
So the final question. Well, first of all, I just want to say to anyone who, in the middle of the night tonight, when you come up with another question, jot it down, and please feel free to contact our panelists. They'll be happy to answer additional questions for you. Before we sign off, if each of you could just tell us one thing that you would like advocates to do to support your trail and the trail movement in New Jersey.
I would like for advocates to focus more on funds and resources to maintain the trails. Maintaining a trail is just as important as building it in the first place.
Great, thanks.
I would say I would like advocates to focus on reaching out to disadvantaged communities and folks that don't normally associate themselves with trails. I think that's one of the biggest issues that we as a group face, is that I think we have our core group of folks that are very excited about it, but we need to build a bigger tent, if you will, and understand that trails are more than just walking and biking. Trails can be a place to meet. Trails can have placemaking opportunities. And there's just so many things that folks can do along a trail, and we have to recognize what folks of different backgrounds, what are the types of things that they like to do and enjoy to do, and how we can make trails fit into that.
Great. How about you, Deb?
Well, besides the ask that I did, which is to get everybody to go on to the ESSEX-HUDSON Greenway website and write a digital letter to the governor supporting this project. I would like to see advocates where they are locally, reaching out to their local communities to bring people in and talk about what is the potential for trail development or trail support in their community. That I'd like to see this become part of what we think of as our community advocacy in general, to building our communities, that it's part of building a healthy community, as well as transportation, equity, environment, all the benefits we've talked about. So the awareness that that should become part of our sort of civic engagement in general, locally, I think that would be fantastic.
Awesome. I want to thank you all again for participating, and thank our panelists for such great conversations, and thank you all who stayed late. So we're going to sign off now. Remember, at the end of the Zoom, you're going to be asked to answer a few short questions. Please do it. It helps us all. And cheers. Have a great day.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Bye-bye.